Adam Whitlow gripped the handle of the stroller tighter as he pushed it down the cracked sidewalk of Maple Street, trying to ignore the fact that his 3-year-old daughter was babbling about ice cream he couldn't afford. "Daddy, look, that one has sprinkles," Ella squealed, pointing through the glass of the corner shop. Adam crouched beside her, brushing a strand of soft brown hair from her cheek. "I know, kiddo. Next time, okay? Daddy's gotta save up for a new pair of boots before winter." He offered her a smile, but it felt tight around the edges. His work boots had holes in the soles, and the diner shifts barely covered rent. He straightened up, brushing the dust off his jeans, and turned to head back toward the park. They still had an hour to kill before his neighbor got back to babysit Ella. That's when he saw her. A woman in a cream-colored coat, standing in front of the town's rusted-out welcome sign, brows furrowed like she was looking for something that wasn't there. She didn't look like she belonged. Her boots were spotless, her coat was tailored, and there was something in the way she turned slowly, like she'd landed in a place far from what she expected. And then she caught him staring. "Hi," she said, suddenly smiling, like she hadn't noticed the cracked pavement or the peeling paint on the buildings. "You wouldn't happen to know where the town square is?" Adam blinked, surprised by how soft her voice was. She had this look fresh, confident, but not snooty. Still, she definitely wasn't local. "Yeah," he said, adjusting Ella's stroller. "I'm heading that way, actually. It's not far." Her eyes dropped to Ella, who was now waving at her with both hands. "Well, hello there," the woman said, crouching to Ella's level. "What's your name?" "I'm Ella," she announced proudly, "and this is my daddy." The woman's smile spread wider. "Nice to meet you, Ella. I'm Fallon." Adam had never heard that name before, but it suited her elegant, but not fake. He noticed the delicate gold chain around her neck, the subtle shimmer of her earrings. Everything about her was understated, but expensive in a way you didn't notice unless you were used to having nothing. "Adam," he said quickly, then nodded toward the sidewalk. "Come on, I'll show you around." They walked slowly, Ella humming to herself as they passed the little shops. Fallon looked at everything like it was the first time she'd seen it, like the old bakery sign was art and not a rusted mess. "This place," she said after a while, "it feels like something out of a movie. Small town charm, right?" Adam let out a short laugh. "Yeah, that's one way to put it, though most of the charm's hanging on by duct tape and good intentions." Fallon looked at him. "You don't like it?" He hesitated. I grew up here, it's just not easy, work's hard to come by, everything's old, people are tired, but it's home." She nodded thoughtfully. "That's real, like real." They reached the square, where a few kids were playing near the fountain. Fallon watched them with a strange kind of longing in her eyes. "What about you?" Adam asked. "You visiting family or something?" "No," she said quickly, too quickly. "Just needed a break, thought I'd check out a quiet place for a few days." He raised an eyebrow. "You picked the right town for quiet. We've got 2 diners, 1 gas station, and a movie theater that only plays the same 3 movies on rotation." She grinned. "Perfect." Ella tugged on his jeans, and Adam knelt down. "What do you need, sweetheart?" "Swing," she whispered. He looked over at the playground. "You want Fallon to come push you?" Ella looked up at Fallon with big hopeful eyes. Fallon laughed. "I would love to." They walked over, and Adam watched as Fallon gently pushed Ella on the swing, her laughter blending with Ella's giggles. For a second, he felt something tight in his chest he hadn't felt in years, like warmth, like maybe he wasn't alone. They stayed at the park until the sun dipped lower. When Ella started yawning, Adam turned to Fallon. "You got a place to stay?" She hesitated. "Sort of. I booked a room at the Old Inn down the road." He grimaced. "It's not the worst, but the heater's busted. If you need a better spot, I know a lady who rents out her guest house sometimes. It's not fancy, but it's clean. Fallon smiled. That's really kind of you. He shrugged. You helped me kill an afternoon and made my daughter laugh. Least I could do. She looked at him for a long moment. You're a good dad. His throat tightened. I try. He walked her to the guest house and made sure she got an okay. Before she stepped inside, she turned to him. Hey, Adam. Yeah, hey. Thank you for today. He nodded, anytime. Then she was gone. He didn't expect to see her the next morning. But there she was, waiting outside the diner where he worked the early shift, holding 2 cups of coffee and smiling like they'd known each other for years. I figured, she said, handing him a cup, you might need a tour guide assistant today. He stared at her, unsure what to say. But then she winked and said, Come on, Adam, show me why you love this town. And just like that, something shifted. Fallon kept showing up, every day. They fed ducks at the lake, walked through the farmer's market. She even helped Ella make a paper crown during library story time. And Adam started to feel again, like maybe life hadn't passed him by. Like maybe someone saw him not just the broke single dad scraping by, but the man underneath. What he didn't know was that Fallon Sutter was worth billions. And she was falling in love with a man who had nothing, except a heart bigger than any bank account. The first time Fallon stepped behind the counter at the diner, Adam nearly dropped the tray of clean mugs he was stacking. It's not bring your own tourist day, barked Marla, the owner, from the kitchen pass-through. You got a cousin shadowing or something. Fallon tied the apron strings around her waist and raised an eyebrow at Adam. Didn't you say you were short-staffed? That was not a job offer, he said, stunned. Well, I volunteered, Fallon replied. Your cook threatened to throw a spatula at me if I didn't take orders faster, so I figured the apron was safer. Marla grunted. If she doesn't spill coffee on my regulars, she can stay till lunch. Fallon adjusted the order pad in her hand and leaned toward Adam. You owe me pancakes after this. He stared for a beat longer than he should have. Fallon, clean cut, obviously from somewhere far better off, was already refilling old Mr. Hargrove's coffee like she'd been doing it for years. By the time the lunch rush hit, she'd memorized the regulars' names and was telling stories about a failed cooking class she took in Italy, complete with hand gestures and bad accents that had the entire counter laughing. You ever waitress before? Adam asked, sliding a plate of meatloaf onto the pass. Nope, but I've dealt with boardroom egos. This is friendlier, Fallon said, balancing the plate with surprising ease. He frowned. Boardroom. She waved him off. Just a thing I did in New York, startups, finance, that sort. He narrowed his eyes. You said you were taking a break. Sounds like more than just a desk job. Maybe I got tired of desks, she said, her tone light. Maybe I just wanted something real. Neither of them noticed Ella slipping through the back door until she tugged on Adam's pant leg, cheeks pink from the afternoon sun. Hi, Daddy. Lydia, his next-door neighbor, followed with a sheepish look. Sorry, she insisted on seeing you, said it was an emergency. Fallon lowered herself beside Ella. What's the emergency? Ella looked between them seriously. Daddy forgot Mr. Bear in the stroller. Adam groaned, digging into his coat pocket and pulling out the ragged toy. Fallon accepted it with mock solemnity and presented it to Ella like it was a crown jewel. Crisis averted, she said. Lydia leaned in. We're heading to the library after. Want me to take her? Adam checked the clock. Yes, thanks, I've got another hour. Ella waved at Fallon as she left. Bye, don't forget pancakes. By mid-afternoon, the diner had quieted. Fallon wiped down the pie case slowly. Why'd you really come here? Adam asked, voice low. She glanced up. Why do you think I did? You don't act like someone on vacation. You act like someone running. Fallon hesitated, then set the cloth down. I was engaged, for 3 years, the kind of engagement where everyone tells you it's perfect on paper. Adam leaned against the counter. What happened? He cheated, she said, her voice calm, with someone he met at a charity gala. Found out a week before the wedding, called everything off, shut down my apartment, and left. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. He watched her, unsure what to say. She didn't look broken. She looked like someone who had already done the breaking and survived it. Did you love him? He asked. I thought I did, but I think I loved the idea of it more than the man himself. She looked at him. You ever been in love? He nodded slowly. Ella's mom, we were young, she wanted more than this town could give, left when Ella was 1. You raise her alone. He nodded again. I get help where I can, but yes, it's been me and her for a while. Fallon studied him. That's a lot for one person. I don't have a choice. Kids don't wait for you to figure yourself out. There was something in the way she looked at him then, not pity, not admiration, something deeper. Like she was seeing him clear and full for the first time. That night, Fallon didn't go back to the guest house right away. Instead, they sat on the diner's back steps, the air thick with the scent of baked bread and cooling asphalt. Adam pulled out a small flask and offered it to her. It's just cider, real kind, not that sugary stuff. She took a sip. That's stronger than I expected. He chuckled. Local farmer's secret recipe. You ever think about leaving? She asked, looking out at the quiet street. Every year. But then I look at Ella asleep in her bed, and I think here, at least I know what kind of life I'm giving her. Might not be much, but it's honest. Fallon turned to him. You think I'm just passing through? Aren't you? She didn't answer. Instead, she asked, if I stayed longer, would that be a problem? He looked at her, unsure what she meant. But the way her eyes lingered on his, the way her hand brushed his as she passed the flask back, it felt like a question bigger than just geography. He didn't answer either. But when he walked her back, he stood at the gate a little longer than necessary. And when she looked over her shoulder and said, "See you tomorrow," he didn't hesitate. Yes, tomorrow. Inside, Fallon leaned against the door, heart racing. She had come to hide. But now, she wasn't sure she wanted to leave. The knock came just as Adam was finishing Ella's bedtime story, his voice low so she wouldn't stir. He tucked her in, kissed her forehead, and stepped into the narrow hallway. The old floorboards under his feet creaked, and he cursed softly, hoping she wouldn't wake. When he opened the front door, Fallon stood on the porch, holding a brown paper bag in one hand and a puzzled expression on her face. I hope it's not too late, she said. I brought dinner. He blinked. You cooked? No, she said. Paid someone who knows what they're doing. He stepped back wordlessly, letting her inside. The scent of roasted garlic and something buttery filled the air as soon as she passed him. You didn't have to do this. I didn't want to eat alone tonight, Fallon said, walking straight to the kitchen as if she'd been there a dozen times. And I thought you and Ella might like something that didn't come from a fryer or a microwave. She's already asleep, Adam said, watching her pull out containers. But I'll save her some. Fallon set everything up. Pasta with grilled chicken, a side of roasted vegetables, and 2 slices of cake wrapped in wax paper. She leaned against the counter and gestured toward the table. Sit, you look like you haven't had a proper meal in days. He dropped into the chair across from her, picking up the fork she handed him. How'd you even find this place? Guy at the bookstore recommended it. Said it's the only chef in a 50-mile radius who doesn't use canned mushrooms. As they ate, the silence felt less awkward than it should have. Adam watched her carefully, still unsure what to make of her. She was always one step ahead of his questions, always saying just enough to be sincere without giving everything away. "How long are you planning to stay?" he asked finally. Fallon hesitated. "I don't have an answer for that yet." "You thinking about moving here?" "I'm thinking about what it would look like if I stopped trying to run my life like a business strategy." Adam set his fork down. "That sounds rehearsed." "I've been rehearsing it in my head for weeks." He leaned back. "You want this town to fix something in you?" "No," she said, her voice quieter now. "I want to see if I can still feel something more than numbness." Adam didn't know what to say to that. He'd spent so long trying not to feel certain things, he hadn't considered that someone else might be fighting the same battle in different armor. They finished the meal without speaking again, and Fallon stood to clear the plates. He joined her at the sink, rinsing as she dried. "Tomorrow," she said suddenly, "I want to take you somewhere." He raised an eyebrow. "Where?" "You'll see, just trust me." "That sounds like a trap." "It's not, but you should wear something decent." He laughed. "Define decent." "No stains, no tears, something that doesn't scream 'I've had this since high school.'" He gave her a mock salute. "Yes, ma'am." She lingered near the door after that, like there was more she wanted to say. Her hand brushed his arm briefly, deliberately. "Good night, Adam." "Night, Fallon." The next afternoon, she showed up in a car he didn't recognize. It wasn't flashy, but it was clearly expensive, sleek, quiet engine, the kind of paint that caught light like water. Adam stood on the porch, holding Ella's hand. "This yours?" he asked as she stepped out. "Loaner," she replied. "I had it delivered." He frowned. "You have cars delivered?" Fallon ignored the question. "Lydia said she could watch Ella until dinner. You okay with that?" Adam glanced down at his daughter, who was already trotting toward Lydia's garden next door. "Yes, she'll be fine." Fallon tossed him the keys. "You're driving." "I haven't driven anything this nice in my life." "There's a first time for everything." They drove out past the edge of town, past the lake, past where the pavement turned to country roads. Fallon gave him directions with short, clipped phrases, her gaze fixed on the fields outside. Eventually, they pulled up to a long gravel drive leading to a 2-story white farmhouse with a weathered red barn in the back. A wooden swing hung from the porch beam, swaying gently in the breeze. Adam cut the engine. "What is this place?" Fallon opened her door slowly. "It used to belong to my grandmother. She passed a few years ago. I haven't been back since." He followed her onto the porch. "Why now?" "Because I wanted to see if I remembered what it felt like to be somewhere that didn't care about money or headlines or who you were supposed to be." Inside, the house was quiet, filled with dust motes and faded photographs. Fallon led him through each room like she was walking through a dream. She stopped at the back window, looking out at the empty swing set in the yard. "I used to play there for hours," she said, "before my parents sent me to boarding school, before I learned how to be the person the world expected." Adam stood beside her. "You're not that person here." She turned to him. "I don't want to be." Outside, the wind picked up. She opened the screen door and stepped onto the back porch. Adam followed, and they stood there in silence, watching the sky shift into gold and lavender. "I bought this place when she passed," Fallon said. "I had it restored, kept everything original. I never told anyone I still had it." Adam looked at her. "Why show me?" "Because you don't care about the numbers, or the headlines, or the things I've spent my life trying to protect. You care about what's real." He didn't speak. He didn't have to. She reached for his hand. He let her. The sun dipped lower. The wind carried the scent of wildflowers and old wood. And something between them cracked open something honest, something terrifying, something neither of them wanted to name just yet. But it was there. And it was real. Fallon hadn't meant to stay past the weekend. She told herself it was temporary, that she was just resetting her compass, not rerouting her entire life. But 5 weeks had passed, and the days had begun to feel less like borrowed time and more like roots sinking into something she'd never known she needed. On a cool October morning, she stood in front of the town's only florist, her phone buzzing in her coat pocket for the 6th time. She didn't move to answer it. The name on the screen, Carter Sloan, held no power here. His emails, the ones marked urgent, had been piling up. She hadn't opened a single one. She stepped inside and placed an order for a bouquet of late-season dahlias. When the florist asked who they were for, Fallon hesitated, then gave her own name. She brought them to the cemetery on the hill, not far from the farmhouse, and left them at her grandmother's headstone with a quiet promise. That evening, while Adam helped Ella glue pieces of construction paper into what looked like a turkey missing half its feathers, Fallon leaned against the kitchen doorway. "She wants to show this to her librarian tomorrow," Adam said, carefully peeling a glue stick from his daughter's fingers. "Apparently the turkey has a name. It's Captain Pepper's, don't ask." Fallon laughed, brushing a hand through Ella's hair. "You're going to win art class for sure." Ella beamed. "He's a superhero turkey. He fights bad guys with his feathers." Adam gave Fallon a look. "You see what I'm competing with?" "She's clearly a genius," Fallon said. Then, quieter, "You're doing a good job, Adam." He didn't look at her right away. Instead, he helped Ella gather her supplies and led her to the living room for a cartoon. When he returned, Fallon was pouring tea for both of them. "I need to tell you something," she said, setting one cup in front of him. He glanced at her, waiting. "You know I'm not who I said I was. Not entirely." Adam's jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. "I didn't lie," she continued. "But I left things out, on purpose, because I didn't want to be seen for my last name or my bank accounts or who my ex-fiancé was." "You're not exactly hard to Google," he said finally. "I just didn't want to." Her breath caught. "You knew." "I figured it out a couple weeks ago. You talked about boardrooms like someone who didn't just sit at the table, you ran it. You knew how to order wine without looking at a menu. And that car you had me drive? No loaner comes with custom stitching." She stared at him, stunned. "Why didn't you confront me?" "Because I was waiting to see if you'd tell me." Her throat tightened. "I was scared that if I did, it would change things." "Would it have changed how you looked at me?" he asked. "No," she whispered. "Then it doesn't change how I look at you either." She blinked against the tears she didn't want to let fall. "I've never met anyone who could see through me like you do." Adam reached for her hand, rough and warm against her fingers. "That's because most people aren't looking hard enough." She hesitated, then said, "I've been offered my old position back. I could go back to New York tomorrow and have everything waiting for me: driver, penthouse, staff, all of it." He studied her, and I don't want it. I want Saturday mornings at the farmer's market. I want Ella's turkey stories. I want to wake up and not feel like I'm building something just to prove I can." Adam's voice was quiet. "Are you saying you're staying?" "I'm saying I bought the hardware store." That made him blink. "You what?" "It was up for sale. The owner's retiring. I made an offer through my lawyer. I'm converting half of it into a community space, after school programs, career workshops, free childcare during the holidays. The other half will still sell tools, just with better lighting and no expired batteries." "You bought a business here," he said, as if trying to catch up. "You're really staying." "I'm not going back to that life," she said, voice steady. "I'm choosing this one, and I'm choosing it with open eyes." He looked at her for a long moment, then stood and stepped closer. Fallon, he said, his voice low. I've been falling in love with you since Ella made you a mud pie, and you pretended to eat it like it was a 5-star dish. She laughed softly, tears threatening again. I didn't think I had room for anything else in my life, he continued. But then you showed up with your big city coffee and your sharp shoes, and you started fitting into places I didn't even know were empty. She took a shaky breath. I love you, Adam. I didn't come here to fall for a man with a daughter and a rusted car and 1,000 reasons to run. But I did. I fell for the way you show up every single day. For the way you hold Ella's hand like it's the most important thing in the world. For the way you made me feel like I wasn't broken. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled something out. Her breath hitched when she saw it, a delicate ring, simple and stunning, with a tiny diamond nestled into a gold band that looked older than both of them. It was my mother's, he said. She left it to me with the instructions that I give it to someone who makes me believe again. Fallon's hand flew to her mouth. I don't have a yacht, he said. I don't have stock options or a vacation house, but I have a daughter who already calls you her best friend. I have a life I want to share, and I have this ring, if you'll have it. She didn't wait. She wrapped her arms around him and whispered, yes, into his shoulder, over and over again. They kissed in the kitchen, with glue sticks and paper feathers scattered like confetti. Later that week, the town gathered for the fall festival. Adam stood beside Fallon, watching as Ella led a group of kids in a pie-eating contest with Captain Peppers proudly perched on the judging table. Marla from the diner handed Fallon a cider and muttered, if you're staying for good, I'm putting you on breakfast shift. No arguments. Fallon laughed, only if Adam works the grill. Adam leaned over. You're not getting our pancakes that easy. Fallon turned, smiling. I don't plan to. And as the lights twinkled from the booths, and the stars blinked open above the trees, Fallon realized something she hadn't dared believe before. She hadn't just found love in a struggling diner, a broken swing, or a child's laughter. She had found home. It rained the morning of the town's winter market, a gentle mist that painted the rooftops silver and melted into the cobblestones like watercolor. Fallon stood in front of the newly renovated storefront that used to be the hardware store, her breath visible in the cold air, keys in her hand. Inside, the space no longer smelled of oil and old wood. Now it was clean, warm, vibrant half, stocked with neatly arranged tools and essentials. The other half transformed into an open activity center with bookshelves, arts and crafts stations, and a long table where kids could gather after school. Adam arrived with Ella bundled in a thick purple coat and a beanie with a pom-pom on top. She ran ahead, boots squeaking on the floor. This place looks amazing, Adam said, brushing a few drops of rain off his shoulders. You really did it. Fallon nodded, locking the door behind them. Barely made the deadline, but it's ready for the ribbon cutting this weekend. Ella was already plopped in one of the beanbag chairs in the reading corner, flipping through a picture book. She's going to love it here, Adam said. You've built something that'll change lives. I didn't do it alone, Fallon said. Marla's daughter is volunteering. The librarian's helping with the reading program. Your friend Kyle is teaching basic carpentry starting next month. Adam raised an eyebrow. You've been busy. I had something to prove to myself, she said. That I could build something that wasn't just numbers and margins. That I could belong somewhere not because of what I had, but because of who I was. He studied her face for a moment. You know, you haven't called yourself a New Yorker in weeks. She smiled. That's because I'm not anymore. Later, as they walked to the town square for the final market meeting, Adam slipped his hand into hers. You've changed this place. Maybe, she said, but it changed me first. Are you nervous about Saturday? He asked. She looked up at him. Honestly, I'm nervous about what comes next. He stopped walking. What do you mean? I've never had stability that wasn't tied to a company or a contract. Us, it's the first time I've let go of control and just let something grow. Adam leaned in, brushing her hair away from her face. Then, let's make it official. Let's stop calling this us like it's temporary. I want to marry you, Fallon. She froze, her breath catching. You already proposed. I gave you my mother's ring, but I never gave you a plan. I want to build a life with you here. I want to wake up to you. I want to raise Ella with you. I want us to be a family not in theory, but in practice. Fallon's eyes filled with tears. Yes, let's do it, all of it. The wedding was held 3 weeks later in the greenhouse behind the farmhouse. The air was thick with the scent of pine and eucalyptus, glass panes fogged from the warmth inside. Ella walked down the aisle with a crown of white berries woven into her curls, holding a basket of dried petals she tossed haphazardly. Fallon wore a gown that shimmered like the rain outside, simple and elegant, her hand steady as she reached for Adam's. Mayor Thompson officiated, his voice gravelly but warm, pausing only once to wipe his eyes when Ella hugged Adam's leg mid-vows. I didn't know could be this happy, Fallon whispered as they exchanged rings. Adam's voice was low and even. You make everything feel possible. After the ceremony, they danced under strings of lights while the rain tapped gently against the greenhouse glass. Marla served spiced cider and homemade pie instead of cake. Kyle played guitar in the corner while townspeople took turns spinning around the floor. At one point, Fallon caught Ella asleep in a chair, bundled in a blanket, her head resting on the armrest. She's out cold, Adam said, lifting her carefully. She's used to staying up late, Fallon teased. Not when she's this happy, Adam said. She's safe, loved, home. Fallon watched him carry Ella toward the farmhouse, her heart full to the brim. 2 years later, the town's spring festival had grown into something bigger than anyone expected. The activity center had expanded into a full youth hub, complete with a garden and weekend classes. Fallon sat on a picnic blanket with Ella, now 5, and confidently explaining the rules of a game she'd invented to a group of younger kids. Adam arrived carrying a tray of lemonade, his other hand holding a bouquet of fresh tulips. For you, he said, handing the flowers to Fallon. From the garden, Ella picked them. Fallon took them, placing them gently beside her. Did you see the turnout? We might need a bigger space next year. We'll build one, Adam said, or convert the old post office. It's been empty since last summer. She leaned against him. You really think we could? He kissed the top of her head. We can do anything, together. As the sun dipped low and the festival music drifted through the air, Fallon watched as Ella danced barefoot on the grass with a group of friends, her laughter bright and unburdened. Fallon had once been a woman surrounded by skyscrapers, investors, and impossible expectations. Now she was a wife, a mother, and a cornerstone of a town that had once been nothing more than a dot on a map. She wouldn't trade it for anything. Not even the world she'd left behind.